So I thought of this sort of video vlog idea where I can share some things, like just do a tarot card flip through and just talk, because I don't want to influence your impression of these cards per se. Just want to show them, but yeah. I actually was thinking about the Enneagram, and one of my favorite topics, the instincts, the sexual instincts, for instance. It is a little bit hard for me to do like multitasking, but I'll try. So this is, by the way, this is, what is it called? Gosh. Oh, Prisma Visions. So this one's the monocolor, or well, it's two-toned or whatever. And then I have the same drawings, but more sort of like Van Gogh style. That's what it reminds me of, at least. Yeah. So instincts. This is just my experience, and I don't really feel like, I don't know how useful it is to, and again, just assuming for a second that these sort of nebulous ideas of instincts and such are useful concepts that refer to something that maybe we can all sort of collectively or universally, to a degree, kind of point to and understand as that specific concept. I know there's so-called divergence in thought, and some people are very gung-ho on their way of thinking about things. And I mean, I can be like that too, but I'll say that even in, say, looking at something like psychology with many different schools of thought, and I understand, especially when I read about them, like Wikipedia and things like that are not anywhere close to, it's a very shallow representation of the level of depth that gave rise to those things. And even I often struggle with like having enough patience to read through very interesting but often like cognitively dense text. But where I was going with that is, I'll try to continue doing this, is that I often see them, or the way I conceptualize them is, I see the way they converge more than anything, if that makes sense. Because what is the point? Or that's what it feels like at times. What is the point of kind of, if there's nothing real or substantial to gain from it? If it's all just, I said this and you said this and we're just agree to disagree, like, yeah, I get that, but at the same time, is it anything even meaningful to any degree that we're talking about here? And I'm not saying that it has to be perfect conversion or anything like, but yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of how my mind orients itself. But where was I going with this? I probably won't end up showing all of them because I suck at multitasking. But, and that's okay. Maybe I'll save some of them for more videos. Oh, and you can like, especially these last two, I can just show you, put them together and they make a panorama, I guess. So this is like 4 of Swords and then 5 of Swords, and you have 3, 6, and so on, and Ace 2 or 1 to whatever. And then it just kind of creates an interesting, continuous, potentially progressive image that apparently I think has its own meaning that you might have to get, or maybe it's in here. I don't know. These are like little like keywords. I don't know if it really, but there's like a book that the creator of these decks has that you can buy. I don't have it right now, but yeah. Okay, so back to Enneagram instincts. Yeah, so yeah, anyways, coming back to it, so there's been a theme in my life, and I am older now. I'm actually pretty old, or I feel like I am. I'm almost 30. I feel like I'm becoming an old woman. But going back to when I was a teenager, I didn't have the easiest puberty or time through puberty. And it's something that I struggled with. It's actually, I think it has taken me maybe, I don't know, half a lifetime or more to come to terms with myself. And you know, so I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was like 16. And I don't want to get into like details on that, but I'll say there are women with PCOS that have it much worse, but regardless, it's something that kind of progressively, as you go through life, for me at least, more and more challenges have been introduced. But interestingly enough, when I was young, even though I had PCOS and I had like, I struggled with, like, I didn't like my eyebrows. I thought they were way too bushy and thick. Actually, it's really hard to talk about. But people go through like they call like an awkward, period through puberty, and it's okay. I think even like a few years, or if not a few years ago, a few months ago, or half a year ago or something, I still struggle to look at that part of me and love that or accept that in any way. But interestingly enough, back then, I was not as concerned about my physical appearance. Just thought I looked okay. Nothing special, but not bad. And once I started getting my eyebrows done, I was fine. So they call excess hair growth that happens in PCOS hirsutism, I believe, and mine was mild, but at the same time it still made me self-conscious because I feel like I clearly had it. My ethnicity might have also played a role. My mom doesn't have any hormonal issues that she's ever been diagnosed with, and she didn't have like the whole eyebrows thing, but she had like, apparently, her leg was hairy, and that was like a big insecurity for me. Gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this. But I thought that I was like a freak, right? Just complete freak. But years later, I started just like, I don't know, talking to women, and they told me that like many of these women don't necessarily have like a full-on hormonal imbalance or anything like that, that they know of, having checked out whatever by doctors. But it's not necessarily freakish. Like, there's a lot of variation in that. But my point is that I have struggled with feeling, desirable. I didn't have the words for this back then. When I was young, I had no idea what was happening in terms of like why I'd react the way I did to romantic rejection and nothing else, not social rejection, friend rejection, or whatever. I'm not even sure I really remember many of them or conceived or registered them as rejection per se. Yeah, but the thing is that PCOS, because it was actually kind of milder than it is right now for me, I have to be way more strict with my diet and lifestyle to manage it at this point, and it will probably continue throughout my life. But it was not the biggest hurdle or challenge back then. But I do wonder, again, I'm not a doctor, so don't just take my word for it, but I think I've read studies that obviously the symptoms of PCOS can lead to potential psychological problems, depression, anxiety. Like, how could it not? Doesn't matter what your instincts are or whatever. But I think I might have seen something that suggested that that it might also influence emotions purely on sort of a physiological, neurological, hormonal level. So just kind of your body, instead of necessarily those effects being mediated by your symptoms, your appraisal of those symptoms, can be more sort of internal, physiological. And the thing is, these are all reciprocal, right? I'd assume they are, or I'd be tempted to think of them that way. I don't know what kind of research exists on this, but it would make sense, at least, having lived with this, and also seeing forums and people talk about PCOS online who have it and have experience with it. But this is becoming a super long video. It isn't even supposed to be about PCOS specifically. Yeah, I'll just finish this deck and then I'll actually, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll just continue this. Instead of breaking into videos, so that's too much work. Yeah, so okay. Let me like forget about PCOS for a second. So since I was very young, I felt like, I don't know, like 12, 13, and my first crush was probably at the age of like 9, 10, something like that. I think 9, yeah. And I didn't know it was a crush. I didn't have the words for it. I just knew that I liked spending time around him, even though we barely talked. I was very shy. But anyways, so yeah, around 12, 13, I think I had my like first sort of big crush, right? It was a big deal back then to me. Obviously, I didn't understand the level of intensity of the feelings, especially since I'd known this boy from like previous 2 classes, you know, so I hadn't seen him around for like a year or 2, I don't remember, and all of a sudden to develop like feelings, it's just like took me by surprise. And but something strange came on to me, I guess. At that point in time, I couldn't quite account for it just by the objective sort of experiences, and in fact, even my best friend at the time commented, and I could see other people, it just didn't necessarily accord with and I know teenagers can be hormonal, emotional, whatever, but even so, something about my response was overly emotional. That was very clear to many people around me, perhaps, but she obviously articulated it. She was my best friend. She even like commented at other people, you know, observed my sort of demeanor. not just the, oh, have a like a big crush demeanor, but like that I was clearly emotionally sort of taken, or even, I don't want to call it unstable, it's such a strong word, but yeah, just kind of indicating that, I think. And I don't think that I felt like I think I felt a sort of like something was not good enough about me, right? And that PCOS was a big part of it. And there are things that I can't talk about on camera because even I have a limit. But I mean, I wasn't the only girl with PCOS. I think at least one other girl had it that I could tell because, you know, she seemed to have similar sort of symptoms. But even beyond that, I think it magnified it. I felt scared, or trepidation, or I think a part of me at the time, because I was young and that was like my first big crush, I didn't expect, I had some like potential, you know, hopefulness, right, as anybody might, but you know, it's not the same attitude I have at this point in life. Yeah, so obviously I was rejected at the time, and I mean, obviously years later also I looked back on it, I was like, I don't know why I developed the interest that I did, but anyways, as a kid, but something dark seemed to like develop inside me, and I can't say that it was sort of a fully developed, there's something completely wrong with me or anything like that. I don't know. I don't know if it was necessarily like that, but it was a sense of like foreboding, of something bad internally, if you will, in terms of rejection or expecting rejection, or what it signified in my head. And to this day, and I'm this is really what surprises me a little bit, to this day I still kind of struggle to understand exactly what that symbolizes for me. And that's where the Enneagram comes in. And that's where it's interesting. Whether or not it's like completely, perfectly accurate with whatever's happening I don't know, but to me it felt worthwhile to at least give it a try, because something in me kind of clicked. And at first I actually typed myself as a social type, and because I think I'm not gonna specify names or whatever, but one of the major descriptors for the subtypes floating around, I didn't relate to the sexual 4 at all, because I think even now any sort of hurt that might have visited people that were close to me because or due to my actions or lack of them were not coming from a place of malice, but were rather unwitting. And I've like really dug into myself to try to get an answer to that, right? I have more things to say on that, actually, because apparently it's associated with like BPD, and that's a whole different topic that I'll save for another video. But anyways, coming back to this, I had an online friend who is sexual for herself, And I will say that with the social instinct, the social force, not even that it's not true, it is true. I would, or have had a tendency to kind of broadcast my, what is it, like emotional suffering, and try to kind of garner maybe warmth or some sort of something that way, mainly focused, at least mentally, that was my focus. I don't know how it came across, but mentally focused on specific people that I was interested in romantically, or would like to gain that interest of. And that's going way back to when I was very young. That was the purpose, I feel like, when I look at it, of that broadcasting. And it's not that I didn't garner warmth and sympathy of friends and that I shoved it away. I didn't, but it just, I didn't realize that that's my whole sort of repertoire of behavior was serving that purpose, in a sense. Where was I? What was I even, where's it going with that? Okay, yeah, so anyways, she suggested that I might have, neurosis around sexual instinct instead, because, and it's funny, so the social instincts, not that I don't relate to it, but it didn't register as something very meaningful. I mean, so the neurosis, if you will, I know that's kind of an old-fashioned psychodynamic word, but I read about it and I was like, okay, that's interesting, but it didn't like trigger something in me that just kind of tugs you towards trying to understand it better, or trying to dig into it better. It was just like, okay, cool, that kind of thing. Nothing necessarily deeply evocative for me personally, but I remember getting mad at the time that, because it was all like, oh, sexual instincts, people who are high on this can attract others without even trying, and they can also repel others, but like they're super attractive. And my experience in life had been the opposite. At the time, I don't believe it right now, but at the time, I thought that I was repulsive. And I don't just mean like physically. I mean, at the core, I thought that the more I sort of denuded myself or revealed about myself to a potential romantic interest, the more I'll scare him off. And maybe to a degree that might have been happening, but who knows, even if maybe it was not, sometimes people are just not interested, is what I'm trying to say. But that was my big fear. And right now I'm able to put it in words at the age of almost 30, but at the time I really didn't have the words for it. It just terrified the hell out of me. And I didn't understand what was happening. And of course, others who didn't necessarily react to it the same way, and most people seemingly didn't. But again, I needed that sort of counsel to balance my proclivities, I think, but they wouldn't necessarily connect with that, right? They would say, it's just a boy. Like, yeah, even kids my age, they had enough wisdom to see that, but definitely didn't find any connection when it came to that with family. The opposite, I think. But once in a while, I did find people like that online friend who got it. Especially since she herself had some rough experiences through puberty as well. Actually, her experience, it's pretty awful. Level of bullying, I think. I was lucky to not have gone through something like that, but now she's thriving, in my opinion. Last that I talked to her anyway was several years ago. we're not really friends anymore, but I mention her because it was a part of my journey or whatever. And so I sound ridiculous sometimes. Part of my journey. Okay, so yeah. How long is this? It's 25 minutes already. So yeah, Enneagram helped me sort of give words to what was inchoate, incipient, whatever you want to call it. That was just brewing in me for a while, and I don't always... There was some sense of... I don't even want to call it just efficiency, but from the beginning there was a sense of like I was ugly and repulsive at the core. And I don't just mean sexually, because that like gives a context of like having sex. Like I don't just mean physically or something, because bodies you can, change to a degree. Like that was not really my concern. It was my essence. Who I was repulsive, is what I felt. But around the age of about 22, 23, where I think my appearance also changed a bit without necessarily trying, I did experience my first sort of mutual attraction scenario. And even though it led nowhere, because he liked another girl more than he liked me, it still allowed me to break that schema and potentially consider that I was maybe not entirely so-called not repulsive. Maybe I was still not enough for what I wanted, which was all the way close. Sexual instinct has a word for it. It's called merging or oneness. But obviously it's like you've been seeking something your whole life, you don't know what it is because you've never found it. So I can't say if that's exactly what it is or not, but whatever it is, hopefully, if I do find it, maybe that will help me understand what I was looking for the whole time. And death. I like that one. The rose is one of my favorite kind of, I don't know, symbols. So yeah, I'll save this one for another video. I think I'll leave it at that.